In the small, sleepy town of Agonville, there existed a legend that no one dared to speak of in broad daylight. The tale was whispered only in hushed tones, shared among school children during sleepovers and around campfires. The legend of the blonde in the bathroom was one that had haunted the town for generations. It all started decades ago, when the town's old high school was still new and shiny. The building, now long abandoned, stood on the outskirts of town, a decaying monument to a tragic past. It was said that a beautiful young girl, Livia Morgan, had been the school's most popular student. Her flowing blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes made her the envy of every girl and the desire of every boy. But beauty often breeds jealousy, and Livia's life was not as perfect as it seemed. One fateful day, Livia was found dead in the school's bathroom, her body hanging limply from a rusty pipe, her once vibrant eyes now lifeless and cold. The coroner ruled it a suicide, but whispers of foul play spread like wildfire. It was said that Livia had been the victim of relentless bullying, driven to the brink by her tormentors. Her spirit, fueled by anger and sorrow, refused to rest. Years passed, and the story of Livia Morgan faded into the background of Agonville's history. The old high school was closed down, replaced by a newer, more modern building. But the legend of the blonde in the bathroom persisted. It was said that if you went into the girls' bathroom on the third floor of the abandoned school at midnight, you could summon her by chanting her name 3 times while facing the mirror. Few dared to test the legend, but those who did never returned quite the same. Some were found wandering the halls, muttering incoherently, their eyes wide with terror. Others disappeared altogether, their bodies never found. One rainy October night, a group of teenagers decided to test the legend. Jake, the leader of the group, was a skeptic. He believed the tale to be nothing more than a story used to scare children. With his friends Sarah, Mike, and Emily, they snuck into the old high school. The building groaned under the weight of years of neglect, its walls covered in peeling paint and graffiti. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay. They made their way to the 3rd floor, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the cracked tiles. The bathroom door creaked open, revealing the dark, damp room within. A broken mirror hung above a row of grimy sinks, its surface fractured into a spider web of shards. "Are you guys ready?" Jake asked, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness. The others nodded, though their faces were pale with fear. Jake stepped up to the mirror, his reflection distorted and fragmented. "Livia Morgan," he whispered. "Livia Morgan. Livia Morgan." For a moment, nothing happened. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their breathing. Then, the temperature in the room plummeted, their breath visible in the frigid air. A soft, mournful wail echoed through the bathroom, growing louder and more anguished. The mirror began to shimmer, and from its fractured depths, a figure emerged. Livia's ghostly form was translucent, her once beautiful face now twisted in pain and rage. Her eyes, now dark voids, bore into Jake's soul. "You called me," she hissed, her voice a chilling whisper that cut through the air like a knife. Jake stumbled back, his bravado shattered. "It was just a joke," he stammered. "We didn't mean." "Jokes have consequences," Livia interrupted, her ghostly form growing more solid with each passing second. Her hair, once golden and flowing, now hung in tangled, bloody clumps. Her dress, stained with dark patches, clung to her emaciated frame. Mike and Emily screamed, turning to flee, but the bathroom door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. The only light came from the mirror, which glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. "Please, we're sorry," Sarah cried, tears streaming down her face. Livia's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Sorry won't save you," she whispered, her voice filled with venom. The walls of the bathroom began to bleed, dark red rivulets seeping from the cracks and spreading across the floor. The air was thick with the coppery scent of blood. Livia raised her hands, and the blood responded, swirling around her like a crimson vortex. Jake's flashlight flickered back to life, revealing the true horror of their situation. The blood formed grotesque shapes, writhing and twisting as if alive. Shadowy figures emerged from the walls, their hollow eyes filled with malice. One by one, the teenagers were dragged into the darkness, their screams echoing through the halls. Livia watched with cold satisfaction, her eyes glowing with a malevolent light. When the townsfolk found the school the next day, there was no trace of the teenagers, only the blood-soaked bathroom and the shattered mirror. The legend of the blonde in the bathroom grew stronger, a grim reminder of the town's dark past. And so, the spirit of Livia Morgan remains, bound to the bathroom where she met her tragic end, waiting for the next curious soul to summon her. The disappearance of Jake, Sarah, Mike, and Emily sent shockwaves through Agonville. The town's residents, once skeptical of old legends, now regarded the abandoned high school with a newfound dread. Parents forbade their children from even mentioning the cursed place, and rumors of Livia Morgan's vengeful spirit spread like wildfire. Months passed, and life in Agonville slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Yet, the old high school stood as a silent, sinister reminder of the missing teenagers. Despite the warnings, curiosity continued to gnaw at the edges of the town's collective mind, especially among the younger generation. One chilly November evening, a new group of teenagers gathered in the town's small diner. Chris, a local conspiracy theorist and amateur paranormal investigator, had become obsessed with the legend of Livia Morgan. His friends, Lisa, Tom, and Rachel, listened with a mix of fear and fascination as Chris laid out his plan to investigate the old school. "We can't just let this mystery go unsolved," Chris argued, his eyes alight with a dangerous enthusiasm. "If we can find out what really happened to Jake and the others, we might be able to put Livia's spirit to rest." Lisa, the most cautious of the group, frowned. "Chris, we've heard the stories. People don't come back from that place." "That's why we need to go prepared," Chris insisted, pulling out a backpack filled with cameras, flashlights, and other equipment. "We'll document everything and try to communicate with her. If we understand her pain, maybe we can help her move on." Tom and Rachel exchanged uneasy glances, but ultimately agreed to join the expedition. As night fell, they made their way to the decrepit high school, their breath visible in the frosty air. The building loomed ahead, its dark windows like empty eye sockets, watching their every move. They entered through a broken window, their footsteps echoing in the empty hallways. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay, and every creak and groan of the old building set their nerves on edge. Chris led the way to the third-floor bathroom, his flashlight casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. "Remember," Chris whispered, setting up his equipment, "we're here to help her. Stay calm and respectful." They stood before the shattered mirror, their reflections fragmented and ghostly. Chris took a deep breath and began the chant. "Livia Morgan, Livia Morgan, Livia Morgan." The temperature dropped instantly, and an icy wind whipped through the bathroom. The mirror shimmered, and Livia's ghostly form began to materialize. Her eyes, dark voids of endless torment, locked onto Chris. "You dare disturb me," she hissed, her voice a chilling whisper. Chris stepped forward, his voice trembling. "We're here to help you, Livia. We want to understand your pain." Livia's expression twisted in anger and sorrow. "You cannot understand my suffering. You cannot ease my torment." The bathroom walls began to bleed once more, the dark red liquid seeping from every crack and crevice. The shadowy figures emerged again, their hollow eyes filled with malevolence. The friends' flashlights flickered, casting erratic beams of light that only heightened their terror. "We're sorry for what happened to you," Lisa cried, tears streaming down her face. "Please, tell us how we can help you find peace." Livia's eyes softened for a brief moment, and the bleeding walls seemed to pause. "My tormentors must pay," she whispered. "Their descendants must suffer as I suffered." A cold dread settled over the group. "What do you mean?" Tom asked, his voice barely a whisper. Livia pointed a spectral finger at them. "Your families are cursed. The bloodline of those who wronged me must end." Chris's mind raced. His family had lived in Agonville for generations. Could they be connected to Livia's tormentors? "Livia, please, there must be another way," he pleaded. The shadows began to close in, their forms growing more solid and menacing. Livia's face contorted in rage. There is no other way. Blood for blood, pain for pain. Suddenly, Rachel screamed as one of the shadowy figures grabbed her, dragging her towards the mirror. Tom and Lisa tried to pull her back, but their hands passed through the shadowy form as if it were smoke. Chris grabbed his camera, desperate to document the horror unfolding before them, but the lens cracked and the screen went dark. The room erupted into chaos. The shadowy figures lunged at them, their icy grips like death itself. Lisa and Tom were pulled into the darkness, their screams echoing through the bathroom. Chris, left alone, faced Livia's wrathful spirit. "Please," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "There must be another way." Livia floated closer, her eyes burning with hatred. "There is no redemption for you," she whispered. With a final, bone-chilling scream, the shadows engulfed Chris. The bathroom fell silent once more, the only sound the drip, drip, drip of blood from the walls. The mirror's glow faded, leaving the room in darkness. The next morning, the townsfolk found the high school's doors wide open. Inside, the blood-soaked bathroom and the shattered equipment told the tale of another group of victims claimed by Livia's curse. The legend of the blonde in the bathroom grew stronger, a grim reminder of the town's dark past and the vengeful spirit that still haunted its halls. Agonville would never be the same, for Livia Morgan's wrath was far from sated, and the old high school remained a place of terror, waiting for the next souls brave or foolish enough to enter. Agonville was now a town gripped by fear. The disappearances of Chris, Lisa, Tom, and Rachel had reignited the town's deepest anxieties. Parents kept their children indoors, and whispers of curses and vengeful spirits filled the air. Despite the terror, one person could not let the legend rest. Detective Emily Hart had grown up in Agonville and was familiar with its dark stories. She had lost her younger sister, Emily, to the legend of Livia Morgan years ago. Haunted by the past and determined to uncover the truth, Emily decided to take matters into her own hands. Armed with research and determination, Emily prepared for her encounter with the blonde in the bathroom. She studied old town records and found the names of the girls who had bullied Livia, realizing that their descendants still lived in Agonville. Emily's family was among them. She had to confront Livia, not just as a detective, but as someone connected to her pain. One stormy night, Emily made her way to the abandoned high school. The wind howled and rain battered the decaying structure, but she pushed on, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. She entered the building, the creak of the door echoing ominously in the empty halls. Emily reached the third-floor bathroom, her heart pounding in her chest. She set up candles around the room, their flickering light casting eerie shadows. Taking a deep breath, she faced the shattered mirror and began the chant. "Livia Morgan, Livia Morgan, Livia Morgan." The temperature plummeted, and the air grew heavy with the scent of blood. The mirror shimmered, and Livia's ghostly form began to materialize, her eyes dark voids of endless torment. "You dare disturb me?" Livia hissed, her voice filled with anger. Emily stood her ground. "Livia, I'm here to understand your pain and offer you peace. I know what happened to you, and I'm deeply sorry." Livia's eyes narrowed. "Words are meaningless. I was tormented, driven to despair. My death was their fault, and their descendants must pay." Emily's voice trembled, but she continued. "Livia, I know my family is part of the lineage that wronged you, but this cycle of vengeance must end. You deserve peace, not eternal anger." Livia's form flickered, her expression torn between rage and sorrow. "Peace? There is no peace for me. Only suffering." Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a worn diary she had found in the town archives. "I found your diary, Livia. Your own words. You wrote about your dreams, your hopes, and the pain you endured. You wanted to be remembered for who you were, not just for your death." Livia's ghostly hand reached out, and the diary floated towards her. She began to read, her eyes softening as she absorbed the words of her past self. Tears, shimmering like liquid moonlight, fell from her eyes. I remember," Livia whispered, her voice breaking. "I wanted to be free, to be happy." Emily stepped closer, her voice gentle. "We can help you find that freedom, Livia. Let us put your spirit to rest. Let go of the anger and pain." The shadows that had begun to gather around them receded, the room growing warmer. Livia's form started to glow with a soft, ethereal light. "Thank you," Livia whispered, her voice filled with a fragile hope. "Thank you for remembering me." As the first light of dawn broke through the cracked windows, Livia's spirit began to dissolve, her form turning into a cascade of shimmering particles that drifted upwards, disappearing into the ether. The bathroom, once a place of horror, was now filled with a serene calm. Emily watched, tears in her eyes, as Livia's spirit finally found peace. She collected her equipment and left the old high school. The weight of her mission lifted from her shoulders. The curse was broken, and Agonville could begin to heal. In the days that followed, the town learned of Emily's brave act. The old high school was finally torn down, replaced by a memorial park dedicated to the memory of Livia Morgan and all those who had suffered because of the curse. The legend of the blonde in the bathroom faded into history, a tale of pain transformed into a story of redemption and peace. Detective Emily Hart found solace in knowing she had helped bring closure to a long-standing tragedy. Agonville was no longer a town haunted by fear, but a community united by understanding and remembrance. And as the years passed, the story of Livia Morgan became a lesson in compassion, a reminder that even the darkest of tales could find a light of hope.